Which kind of football are you talking about?
The current the current one version.
All right.
Um, it's interesting to me that people think that FIFA is in charge of the laws of the game. It isn't. They're in charge of the rules of the tournament, but the laws of the game still apply. So the whole issue there um, was that, I mean, in the foul that Balogun committed, or by one individual was asserted not to have committed. Um, that is a law of the game, and the law number 12, and a red card was on thorough after, admittedly, an awful lot of review awarded. Now, Law 12 is the law of the game. The laws of the game were put together originally in 1886 by the International Football Association Board. And that is still an organization which is in charge of the laws, not FIFA. And it's interesting that, to me at least, that there are 8 committee members of the International Football Association Board. 4 of them are actually delegates from FIFA. And the other 4, get this, are delegates from England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales.
Well, that's where the game started. Fair enough.
It's where, a few years earlier, there had been a lot of disputes in the international competition between England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, which is held every year, because they had slightly different rules. So the 4 representatives got together and wrote the laws. I keep saying rules, I mean laws. And then they were adopted by FIFA in 1904 as the laws of the international laws of the game. And that organization still meets regularly. It's 140 years, what is it, 140 years old. Not quite as old as the United States. I know that's a subject for today, so I'll stop there.
Well, I read there's a precedent that there's a committee that rules on the laws, and that I believe it was Ronaldo who was given a red card and suspended for 3 games. And after he served 1 game suspension, that committee ruled that he did not have to complete the next 2-game suspension until a year had passed. So
Correct.
there was a precedent. I mean, I was very upset by Trump's intervention. Don't get me wrong. I just read this defense that this is not unprecedented, in fact.
But that is one of only 2 precedents. And yes, it's an extraordinary precedent, because Ronaldo in the game against Ireland in the run-up to in qualifying for the World Cup put an elbow in a player's head. It was vicious. I can't remember now how accidental it was.
It was out of character. That was one of their rulings. This was not a part of a pattern.
But it's interesting that it only applied so far. The precedent, other than one other, applied to Ronaldo.
Right.
Do you think they needed him in the World Cup and to be playing? The prior to that, it was 1962, when there was I don't think there was any video even, or any recorded video. And the FIFA Rules Committee elected themselves to waive off a red card, which they had observed live, and the committee decided to overrule the referee on the field. There was no VAR. There was no other judging panel available. And that's the only other precedent.
62, was that the Jeff Hurst World Cup? Was it?
Homer, you're pretty good. No, Jeff Hurst played in 66.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow, we're going deep.
We should stop. I've had enough World Cup this week.
Well, I'm going to start off with a little World Cup vignette. Um, Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a couple of songs that I really appreciated this week. Um, One was the World Cup Country Roads, and the 4th of July was This Land Is Your Land. So, did you all witness this? The entire stadium up in Seattle sang Country Roads after.
John, I was so glad to see this because all American fans usually do is chant USA, USA. It's because we don't really have a song we all share. I know that's about West Virginia, but I was just glad to see the American fans singing something in response to the various songs sung, especially by the Welsh team, seem to be inclined to sing hymns. But it was a good song, good
Very
rhythm.
good song.
Yeah. So
And Mauricio Pochettino, the Argentinian coach of the team, if you noticed, he had learned the words to that song and was singing Country Roads along with the team and with all the fans at one end. It was
fantastic.
wonderful.
Yeah, and so I was so curious about this because this is one of my favorite songs too at our sing along. How did this happen? So, and the other heartwarming thing is this guy, Weston McKinney, who's one of the better players, was leading the crowd at one point. And here he is. Um, but so, how did this happen? I investigated, and it wasn't spontaneous. It was premeditated. That the FIFA chief strategy officer, who happens to be an American.
Well,
uh,
we're out of backs. Yeah, not a problem I was expecting. But we do, it's only just a bit left on the outside the fence. Okay. Yeah, we got all of the stuff in here and then some stuff outside.
Tom, I think
Yeah,
we're
it's a bit more outside.
Tom, I think we're hearing you.
Perfect.
We are.
And you want bags at any specific place?
Oh, let's see.
Not Tom Ford, whoever the Zoom user is.
There you are. You've done it. Well done.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
No, John, whoever the Zoom user is, that's who's chit-chatting.
We're all Zoom users.
But on their name, it says Zoom user.
Oh,
I think it's Homer, actually.
No, there's nobody in here talking about
no, not
pipes or
Homer.
whatever.
Apologies, Homer.
Thanks.
Oh, well, Zoom user silenced himself. Okay, so it was this organizer, the FIFA chief strategy officer, and they planned this out way in advance. And in fact, there were other songs that were in the running. Sweet Caroline, which they sing at every St. Mary's game, and I always look forward to it. Um, uh, but Britain took it before we had a chance to get it. So there was a little interesting flow. Usually, music influence is flowing from Britain to us. I'm thinking Beatles, but obviously the Beatles take their hats off to Elvis and all sorts of American musicians. It's a nice partnership. And so Britain got Sweet Caroline. So they're still in it. And my gosh, we might be hearing Sweet Caroline another couple of times. Living on a Prayer didn't quite make the cut. So yeah, so that's how we got Country Roads. Yeah, Bob.
Well, two comments. One very important. There is no British soccer team. Um, this dates back again to 1880 something. But anyway, there's an English, a Scottish, etc., etc. Sweet Caroline has been indeed the song sung by England fans, but they took it from my birthplace hometown team, Aston Villa, who first sang Sweet Caroline several years ago. Anyway, they've actually dumped it for the World Cup here, I think because it's an American song, and they're singing currently Wonderwall by Oasis, the Manchester group. But they may well go back to Sweet Caroline because it's a wonderful song.
It is. It is. By Neil Diamond. I don't know if any of you saw the movie last year, Song Sung Blue. It's
Yes.
about a cover band for Neil Diamond, and this guy who's trying to channel Neil Diamond, and he performs all over at country fairs and various places. It's really good. It's starring Hugh Jackman. Yeah, Bob.
My hand was left up. Apologies, I've lowered it.
Okay. All right. So, and then the other song, I was kind of in the doldrums on the 4th of July, the actual 4th of July. Just, thinking how fraught it was and how some people didn't want to celebrate at all. And then a friend sent me This Land Is Your Land. And right away it lifted my spirits, Bruce Springsteen. But you don't see Bruce Springsteen on the screen at all. All it was is pictures of America. And so I got a screenshot when they were doing California, and I thought this was a particularly magnificent picture of our lovely San Francisco. Um, uh, and they sing at first from California to the New York Islands, and then you go across the country and back. And this is Navajos participating from California to the Gulf Stream waters. Anyway, it picked up my spirits, and it just made me realize that this land's going to be here a lot longer than the current administration. Yeah, Homer.
Well, I've always associated the song with Pete Seeger, not with Bruce Springsteen.
Well, this was the one.
He does sing it. Seeger does sing it in A Complete Unknown. But of course, he sang it long before that movie. But I'm very pleased to see you showed Navajo singing it, John, because I've always had a reservation about this song because I'm not sure Native Americans like to hear us sing "This Land Is Our Land." I'm glad to see Navajo would consider them, this part of them, that this is their land. It's absolutely their land.
Well, yes, it is. Okay. Well, all right. So those were my songs for the week.
That would have been a good one.
So we're going to finish up with Washington. Let's see. Getting a little interference again. Finishing up with Washington, I want to mention the myth of Cincinnatus. Actually, it's not a myth. It's an actual Roman soldier who then became a consul, and he retired from public service to return to the simple life of farming, and then his countrymen had to call him back. He came back, put out solved a big problem, and then went back to farming. And when Washington, after Valley Forge, the, the parallels were obvious, and he returned to Mount Vernon. And this is a statue of Cincinnatus and his story in Vienna. And then this one is in Cincinnati. Cincinnati at the time of 1883 was not its name. So I'll talk about that in just a second. So when Washington gave up all his power within 2 weeks after Yorktown, the movements started across the country, societies of Cincinnatus for veterans, specifically to aid veterans. It was actually the idea of Henry Knox, who we encountered, one of Washington's main assistants. And of course, Washington was named the first president general. And it's after that Cincinnati is established as a city. Before then, it was called La Centeville. This is interesting to me because Cincinnati, all of my ancestors are from northern Kentucky, many right across the river from Cincinnati. And so this is the so-called Licking River, which comes and empties right across from where Cincinnati now stands. And the Licking River was very familiar with me growing up because it went right through the community where my parents went to high school. And I also went to summer camp near the Licking River. So if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, why was it called the Licking River? Because of the salty springs and then the resultant salt licks. And animals came from all around, wild animals, deer. But in previous eons, it also attracted mammoths and mastodons. So there's a state park, Big Bones State Park, where which was established after diggers discovered bones there. The French had first made notes about it because they were the first in the Ohio River, but the big digs happened after independence. So I remember when going to camp that we'd take a side trip to Big Bone State Park and get all this. It became a big cultural thing. For instance, a grateful populace were making mammoth cheeses. So this one from Cheshire to Jefferson when he was president. And here's the thing. Jefferson thought that there were still mammoths out in the hinterland of America, which was one of the main reasons he sent Lewis and Clark was to run down the mastodons and the mammoths. At that time, the concept of extinction had not been established. And the prevailing belief was God would never let any animal go extinct. And it wasn't until the 1830s that a Frenchman, I forget his name, came up with the theory, yes, the animals can go extinct. And but Lewis and Clark certainly didn't think that. And so this replicating mammoth cheeses continued as a tradition. And as I said, Cincinnatus had been called out of retirement. It only took him 16 days to solve Rome's problems. But like Cincinnatus, Washington was called out of retirement in 1789 for 8 years as he took up the job of president. I mentioned a lot during our discussions of Washington how much charisma he had. And his gravitas was cultivated. It wasn't totally spontaneous. And Hamilton, who knew him better than anybody, bet somebody that they wouldn't have enough nerve to treat Washington informally. And so the bet was, I bet you're not going to go up and slap him on the shoulder and say, "My dear general, how happy I am to see you looking so well." And the guy took the bet, Gouverneur Morris, and Washington ended it immediately by stepping back, fixing Morris with a cold, silent stare, and saying nothing. That was in the Chernow book. I thought it was amusing. But so this famous charisma that he had and respect either came from his instincts or an understanding that to be respected, he had to be seen as being a little bit above the fray. So finally, Washington was able to walk away completely in 1796. And Ken Burns says he was at the height of his political power. I'm always reminded, when do you retire? When's the best time to retire? And I've always thought in the sports world, it was Sandy Koufax who walked away at the peak of his ability, where you had Michael Jordan and Ricky Henderson staying on way, way past their shelf life. Anyway, walking away from power was something that we were supposed to do, the passage of power, peaceful passage of power. Was something that we held out to the world until 2000, until January 6th. Hamilton, the musical, makes a nod to this by having King George say, "I wasn't aware that that's something a person could do." And then he he learns who the replacement is. Very dismissive of John Adams. Yeah, Homer.
Just have to ask what you think of Ted Williams' last game, his retirement.
Tell me.
The Hub bids kid adieu, the best sports headline ever. Ted Williams would not come out of the dugout to wave to the crowd after his last at bat.
Really?
Yeah, great. There was that dignity, the Washington dignity.
Huh. Interesting. Interesting.
Sort of.
Well, no, but there was a great essay on him in retirement, being down in southern Florida. What are those islands? And just learning to fish, and he was going to be the best fisherman in the history of the world. It was a very interesting essay. Okay. So Washington would have been surprised, flabbergasted at the abdication of the legislative branch. And when he finally left office, he had three pleas. Avoid partisanship. He was leery of tribal identity, and no foreign entanglements, and to leave office, peaceful passage of power. But it's kind of hard to run politics. He didn't foresee, nor did any of the founding fathers, political parties. But I think we all understand now that people out of power form coalitions to try to get into power, and that's not just American politics. That is observed in the animal world. Primatologists notice there's an alpha male who's calling the shots, but there's always lurking on the sidelines a coalition of beta males. And I think I've talked about that before. So some of that may not just be American politics, some of it may be innate.
Yeah, John, this is Tom. But I thought early in the presidential history, I don't know if it was Adams or Jefferson or after Jefferson, uh, there was a lengthy process to finally elect a president. I mean, they went to 50 ballots or something. Does that ring a bell with anybody in history?
I think it was the first big battle was actually for the vice president with Aaron Burr in the picture. But I'd have to look that up to be sure. But by and large, it was mostly peaceful. I guess the 1876 that ended Reconstruction and brought on Rutherford B. Hayes was a particularly lengthy battle. Of course, Andrew Jackson was insulted when the yeah, Adams.
Hello. Hi there.
They
Welcome home. Brought back some tools
okay.
and was hoping.
Uh,
Now I need smaller. Oh, okay. Yes.
It's Rudy, Johnny.
oh, is that Rudy?
Yeah.
Like those little things.
Rudy? Left the room.
Okay. Um, Okay. So it's kind of hard to avoid when you're making coalitions, and there's a tribal identity that starts happening. And when it works, it requires compromise and give and take. When it doesn't work, then you have polarization, which is what we got now. In the Burns show, I thought this scholar at Yale made an interesting point. He said, "Yeah," she said, "Yeah, the Declaration of Independence ignored women and the poor and enslaved and native peoples." But these people just watching us shrug off the power of Great Britain gave them hope. She also pointed out how significant it was that the Continental Army was called the Continental Army. It tipped the hat of the ambition, even then, of the Eastern Seaboard politicians, that they knew once they got a toehold that you could keep going all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And this is kind of a forerunner of manifest destiny. And you know, and the headlines today we've talked about, is Israel part of our manifest destiny? And there's more and more questioning of that, and more talk of Israel being alone. So I saw that. I'm going to read those articles, but they knew California was out there. Jefferson made this interesting comment. I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past. So he engaged Lewis and Clark. And by doing that, and then buying Louisiana, which was much larger than the state of Louisiana, from Napoleon, he got us going more than any of the other founding fathers on our manifest destiny. Okay, so that's all I really had to say about Washington and the beginning, the Declaration of Independence, and any other comments about the history? And then, so how have we been doing at 250? The Economist had a couple of events, and this is a particularly good one that Ramsey cued me in. And I was surprised. Their prognosis for us is much better than the kind of tenor that I get from friends and neighbors, which is much more glum. And so they were, by and large, optimistic. So there's a 45-minute podcast where they have four of their main commentators, and their diagnosis was, yeah, Americans are anxious, but they're still awesomely powerful. And they make another point about how restless Americans are, which they see as a virtue, that we're restless. So when we're confronted with a problem, we just start working on it and examine it and self-correct. And they make the point that Does China have that restlessness and self-confidence and independence of thought to be able to wrestle and struggle with these things? So they talked about what were the ambitions of the founding fathers? What's the state of the executive branch? With Trump, you can that one was dealt with pretty quickly, but the health of the democracy they thought was better than I think it is. And then they looked at America's relationship with the world and finally asked the question, will democracy survive? So the founding fathers, they repeat what Ken Burns repeated, the consent of the governed is, it was really a radical idea. Of course, it was to be found in political philosophy books, but the first time that it had really been implemented full scale on an aspiring nation. And they were all Brits, but they all found it inspiring. Here they are; they were on the losing end of it, but the idealism um, uh, and they had some data. They did some polling in preparation for this discussion. Uh, and the question was to Americans, have you moved closer or further away from the founding ideals? And you can see there's a split, unsurprisingly, between Democrats and Republicans. So the lighter the color, the more the closer you are to the founding fathers. So the Republicans are way ahead of that. Independence, per usual, intermediate between the two. And the Democrats are pretty downcast. I'll just dismiss this question by a wisecrack. They felt that Donald Trump's administration was more like a king and his court with courtiers around, all informal relationships, trying to get the presidency, because the last thing he's heard is what he'll run with. But the editor in chief was very optimistic about the midterms and that this is all going to be cooled out with the midterms. Let's hope she's right. There's a very much in your face about Trump's wrecking ball revolution. And the question was, will we arise again from this wrecking ball? I mean, we've seen it in the East Wing of the White House and the reflecting pool. But the panel was unanimous that America is going to bounce back from Trump, at least in the topics that were brought up. Our restlessness will not let his wrecking ball stand. And so the our question was, how proud of are you? And I think that's what a lot of Democrats were suffering. It was hard for us to take pride in this 4th of July. And here's the reason. 80% of Republicans are very proud, whereas only 20%. With again the independents in the middle. Interestingly, the older the independent, the more proud they were. The younger the independent, the more sour they were, even more pessimistic than the Democrats. And then this question, will the U.S. government last another 250 years? And red is good. So the Republicans were more inclined to think will last another 250 years, but only 50% of them think we will. And the independents, curiously, are the most pessimistic of all. Then you look at race, and of course that's been our original sin. So it is interesting to take a look to see if there's a racial divide on this. And so America's greatest failures, of course, blacks will think slavery was the greatest failure. Hispanics, not as much, but more than whites. And then coming in number two is political polarization, felt more by whites than blacks or Hispanics, interestingly. And it's fairly even for economic inequality. America's greatest achievements, freedom and liberty, obviously, whites are going to think that more than blacks, but Hispanics are pretty close to whites, interestingly enough. And then they're all about equal on science and innovation. So I thought that was an interesting breakdown. So to repeat, they think restlessness is a main characteristic and that it's a good thing. And that might give us a hedge over China. They asked each panel member for a wish, and the end to gerrymandering, I thought was a pretty good one, and that Congress should reflect the wishes of the people. We see this over and over again, that Congress, because of the primary process, sends the most extreme people. And we can see that in action with Trump pushing ahead his favorites in primaries. And we'll see in Texas if that backfires, because he's not pushing people in of the middle that could appeal to the middle. That's never been his style. And it's cost him dearly in previous elections when it came to Congress. So we'll see what happens. And in the case of my people in Indiana, the people who stood up to Trump on gerrymandering, he took on each one of them and primaried them, which means he took more extreme MAGA types and pushed out the Republicans who had defied him. And then the last wish was, we're not really as divided as you might think. Once you step aside of the primary and the radicals in each party, uh, people can get along.
Hey, John, this is Tom. Could you go back a slide?
Sure.
So, I always think about this. What are the wishes of the people? If you look at the election, Trump did not get 50% of the popular vote. He only got 49%. So there was 51% who voted against him. And then you say, what are the wishes of the people? Do you say it's the Electoral College? Do you say it's the House of the Representatives? That's sort of a tough one to answer.
Yeah, but time after time, like Pew will do a questionnaire on gun control, and you'll find out that the from these questionnaires that people are more moderate, but they're not the ones in Congress. The ones in Congress are the true believers. So I think that's what that panelist wish was addressing. Yeah, and Pew has a website, and they publish all of the questionnaires they've ever done. And you go in there and noodle around. It is surprising how moderate when the Americans are allowed to express their opinions, how moderate the population is. So I think that's what that wish reflected. So, um, so is America actually declining? So the Economist said, you know what? We're going to answer that with data. We're enough of opinions. Let's just look at the numbers. And so I'm going to do a brief economic history of America. Even now, when we feel we're in decline, our GDP per person is off the charts. You hear China is outperforming America. Well, that's all their population, and even that, it all depends if you use parity purchase. Like there's this concept, the Big Mac index. But if you look at exchange rates, even in absolute terms, America is still ahead. But per person, standard of living, no. And of course, that spills over to the military, where we still are outspending China in the military. I think aircraft carriers, I think they've only got three. And I think we have somewhere in the teens. So we still have the military power, but here's where we're failing. We're in the Trump administration cutting back on research. The number of top 100 universities has been dropping in the age of Trump, and China has been rising. So the Economist concludes America's still mighty, but we're becoming less dominant. But let's look at the things that are quantifiable. And I thought this is another one of the great graphics. I'm sorry, Pepper's not here today. But this is the flow of time. So this is the United States in 1820. And we just finished our Revolutionary War, and then the Brits came back for the War of 1812. So we're still limited. We're about the size of Japan, and the heft of our economic output, along with Russia. Britain rules the world. At least it does after 1840, the Opium Wars, and there we trade places with China. Where you get a mishmash like this, this means there's been a change in place. So China goes from number one before 1840 to number two, and Britain goes into first place. But look who's coming along very quietly. And that's the United States. And it's not going to be long until the United States, by 1903, which is the next graph, is going to be number one. So that's a good place to stop. And we'll start here. Not next week. Next week, I'm having a cataract taken out. So in 2 weeks, this will be where we'll start. And of course, if there's any questions about or requests about what we can do after we finish this brief history of America, please let me know. I'm all ears. Yeah, Homer.
Well, just to be a little bit parochial, what's driving America's economic fortunes? If you look at the latest figures, California has moved into number 4 spot of world's greatest economic powers. We're closing in on Germany. With our 30 million people, we're closing in on a very much bigger country in population. And that's because of the extraordinary productivity of Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, and to some extent of San Diego and LA as well. But our messy, confused state somehow has a genius for producing economic wealth. It's just extraordinary what's going on now compared to any other population of our size.
And I think that's in keeping with the restlessness thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We've passed Great Britain now, and we've passed France long ago. We're closing in on Germany. So there you are. You take California out of America, and I'm not sure it's going to look as rosy as it does in these economist figures.
Yeah.
Thanks to us.
Yeah. No, and we're fortunate to live right at the epicenter.
Yeah, we are indeed.
Yeah.
So, like, is this chart here based on person or everybody in the country? Seems to me that you ought to divide it by the number of people in the country, or
No, this is just total gross national product.
And it's only up to 1903, right?
Well, it's spoiler alert. This is where we go to number one. and then more spoiler alerts. It's going to go all the way up to where China overtakes us in terms of gross national output. But going by purchasing power parity. There's a couple of ways of measuring output, and one is to take account of how much a yuan, the Chinese currency, will buy in its local market. The other is the exchange rate. So this is kind of confuses things a little bit, but the Economist at least says that America has all the dynamism going for it, thanks to the unleashing of the private sector. Yeah, Michael.
Well, I don't know if this would be something for further discussion, but maybe in 2 weeks. I just read a review of a book and I sent this review to John. It's called Gerontocracy in America, How the Old Are Hoarding Power and Wealth and What to Do About It. It's a book that just came out, but it's basically about how the old people are sort of running this country. I mean, he talks about how uh, Biden was 81 and Trump is 78, running for president. And we've got people at least in the Senate, who are in their 90s, Charles Grassley. We've got old people running this country uh, who have, he talks about they've paid off their homes. We get all kinds of tax breaks. And we're the ones who generally vote, by the way. The old people are showing up for almost every election. The young people are dissatisfied. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about what well, it's just something to reflect on as far as our country's future, because right now the future of our country is basically in the hands of a lot of old people who are uh, running things very comfortably as far as they're concerned. In fact, one of the ideas he proposes, and I'm not so sure, is getting rid of the Senate. This idea of having these people serve for 6 years and they become like lifetime. They serve one term after another, and there's supposed to be the great debating format and so on, but they gum up more stuff than they accomplish, in some people's opinions. And if we just had the House of Representatives having these people represent us instead of two people supposedly representing, in our case, almost 40 million people in California and maybe 700,000 in Wyoming. It's a thought, getting rid of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, without the Senate, we'd have the SAVE Act passed.
Well, we'd have a whole lot of things getting accomplished. I mean, the Senate, is acting like they're this great debating forum, um, but they just crawl through legislation. Not that the Congress, the House of Representatives, is any better, but these two senators from every state uh, can slow things down to a crawl and get, with the filibuster and so on. And yet they have to okay judges and uh, people in the cabinet and so on.
Treaties.
And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I to say, I just thought it's interesting. This guy's book about, look at all the gray hairs here, who are the people running this country. The young people, I don't think are very confident of the future of the country.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if anybody else has suggestions, let me know.
Right.
John, whose panel was it? That's the Pew panel you were talking about? Who?
Oh, the panel was the Economist panel.
Economist from the magazine.
Yeah, I'll send a link out.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, folks.
Thanks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, cataract surgery goes easy, John. Should be fine.
I've
Oh, it's
had
better.
one. I've had one.
Okay.
I've had one too. They don't tell you about wearing the eye patch and putting eye drops in and so on. I mean, it's not like you just walk in and walk out.
Okay. All right.
Thanks a lot, John.
All right. You bet. See
Yeah.
y'all.
Thanks, John.
Good luck. See you in a couple weeks.